Yo guys, Ponchi here, and today I wanted to show you how to use the sequencer on the Moog Grandmother. So, first things first, I want to show you how to just get started with the sequencer doing a basic sequence. So the first thing you got to do is set the mode over here to record. So move that over, and once it's in record mode, whatever notes you play will be added on to the end of the sequence, and then you flip it back to sequence, and then you can play it. So I'm just going to do a simple C9 chord here. Okay, so I go ahead and flip it back to sequence. The play button enables already, and then all you have to do is hold down a note. And then the interesting thing about this is the grandmother makes it super easy to transpose. So whatever note you play, it will start the sequence on that note using the intervals that you set in your sequence. So if I want to transpose it, you know, I normally start it on C. So if I want to transpose it up to F, bam, up to G, and there you have it. So that's how you use the sequence in the most basic form. Now it turns out you actually have access to 3 recorded sequences on your grandmother. And the thing about that is they're not power dependent, meaning that if you shut off the power, it will retain the sequences in your memory. So right over here where it says octave/sequence, these are your 3 sequences. Right now I had it on 2. So if I powered down, turned it back on, and then played sequence 2, it would still play the same exact one. So now we can get a little more tricky. Some of the same things still apply to the sequencer as if you were using the arpeggiator, for example, or other things on the synth. So for example, hold. If you want to take your hands off while it's playing the sequence and just press hold. Okay, and then over here written in the small print we have tie, rest, and accent. So if you wanted to add those things to the sequence, then you would do that as follows. So go back to record. So anytime you're on one of the sequences and then you go to record, that will automatically overwrite that actual sequence. However, if you switch to record on accident, then you can just switch back to sequence and that same sequence will still be there. But once you switch to record and you start inputting notes, that's going to overwrite your current sequence. So if we want to add some rests, for example, I'm going to do the same chord and just add some rests in there. Okay, go back to sequence. And then of course the rate is one of those things that still applies in the sequence mode, so you can change the rate. By the way, keep in mind if you're on random up here in the direction, random kind of treats things a little differently than if you were in order, for example. So random kind of messes with the sequence that you programmed. You'll notice if I start the sequence in random, it doesn't quite have the same rests in the same places that I put them in the original sequence. So if you want it to follow the sequence that you set exactly, then make sure it's in order. So So that way, especially, you'll retain the rhythm that you set in your sequence. So another thing we can do, if we want to add an accent, then let's go ahead and do that. So when you press accent, whatever note you press after it will be applied an accent. If we want to do a shorter sequence, you can really hear it. So let's just put the accent on the fourth note, for example. Okay, go back to sequence. And there you have it. When you do it fast, you can really kind of hear that one note being presented a little bit more than the other ones. So, and then one final thing I want to show you guys that's not exactly super obvious because it's not really written anywhere except in the manual, of course. You can add legato to your sequences. So I just want to show you what it sounds like real quick before I explain it. So the way to add legato is you hold down a note and then press a note after that while you're holding the first one down. Okay? So go back to the sequence. So you can kind of hear something's a little different there. Now, the glide and the legato are tied into each other. However, they're not exactly the same thing. So, and you can clearly hear that because right now I have the glide down all the way. But you can still hear that there's something kind of different with between the second and third note there. So essentially, you know, for those of you that might be new to synths or just new to legato in general, it's essentially kind of, you know, again, it's not the same as a glide, but you can kind of look at it as like a smoothing between two notes. So rather than two notes being distinctly, being played distinctly one after the other, legato kind of ties them together in a smoother fashion. So you can hear that. You know, it almost sounds like the second note is kind of sliding into the third note. However, if you turn up the glide, you can kind of hear that it's being affected by the speed of the glide. So that's an interesting thing to come up with some really cool sequences that kind of sound a little smoother. Like let's make a sequence, for example, that has all legato between every note. Okay? You kind of got to stretch there, you know, sometimes it might be easier to do it with two hands, so. You'll notice that if I mess with the release a little bit, like for example, I turn the release all the way down, you can't quite hear that distinct separation between the notes when you're using legato. So you could almost kind of look as legato as a way of adding release between notes. That's one way to look at it, but you know, keep in mind that legato and release are two totally separate things. But that's kind of a way to look at it, you know, a kind of a way to visualize it a little bit, if you will. So, But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. Hope that helps you guys. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and feel free to leave a comment down below if you have any questions or comments about the video. If you have any requests for new videos, then let me know down below, and I will see you in the next one.